So I'm excited to welcome our special guests and mothers with us today who are going to do exactly that. They're going to share their own journey with you today so that you can know that you are loved, seen, and heard by God himself. So I'd like to welcome Leah to the show, Nicole and Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, great.
So we're just going to have some time now for you to share a bit about your motherhood journey with those who are watching today. So Nicole, we'll start with you. We know, I know a bit of your story, a bit of it, but you wear many hats. You're a mom, a counselor, a speaker, an author. But we also know that you have a really powerful story of redemption. So can you share a bit about that and what's brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I was a mother by surprise. I had an unplanned pregnancy when I was 23, and I was with a man that wasn't very kind. And after a period of time, I had this beautiful baby, and we ended up in hiding. And through that beginning stage, I started to really challenge. I thought of myself less than. And so over a period of time, it was really God pursuing me through that season of my life and reminding me who I was. And we spent some time in hiding, my daughter and I, and then we married a man, and that kind of actually took on a life of its own. And he stepped into a parenting role, and it was this really great experience until it wasn't.
Right.
And then behind the scenes, there was a lot going on for him in his life, and he walked away. And that nosedive into what I call the valley of rejection. My daughter and I moved into a little apartment, and God did some incredible work on me there.
Yeah.
And that in that season, I started to see myself. I had been seeing myself through the eyes of the man who walked away instead of through the eyes of the man who never would.
That's
And
good.
it was a really beautiful season for my daughter and I. And motherhood is this incredible journey, isn't it? And when we realize our children travel with us through these seasons. And so God has, through those seasons, brought my daughter and I through some incredible stories and an incredible journey. And now we're on this side of things looking back at, okay, what has God done? What does God do in the valleys through motherhood? Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that, right? For anybody today who's maybe a single mom and sort of navigating that season and helping them see that we've all experienced those joys and challenges, but there is someone who walks with you, even when you maybe feel alone. And Leah, you've had a very beautifully layered motherhood journey as well. You're a biological mom to 2 kids, and you've also are what you like to call a bonus mom to adult children. You mentor young women in their journey as well. So can you tell us a bit about your motherhood journey?
Yeah, it's beautifully layered for sure. I wanted to be a mom my whole life. When I was younger, I was like, gonna get married when I'm 19, have my first kid when I'm 20. And I found myself, a single mom at 27 after my husband had walked out. And so I had a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, and I just found myself in probably the lowest moment, of my life, just being like, God, where are you? Like feeling unworthy and just unloved, and where can we go from here? But looking back, I remember wishing that season away. I remember crying in my bedroom, just being like, God, like I just fast forward 10 years. Like, what is this going to look like in 10 years? I just want to be through this, right? And in those moments, I felt God closer than I've ever felt. He was really close to the brokenhearted. And now that I'm like through that season and ahead of that, it's like I would give anything to go back to those moments where I truly felt God's presence and God holding me through those years of being a single mom. And then, years later, God brought redemption, and I got remarried and blended families, and that was a beautiful journey as well.
Can you share a little bit about that, what that journey's been?
Yeah, that was, I call it a messy masterpiece. It's both beautiful and complex all in one. And it just comes with highs and lows for sure, just like any motherhood journey. But really keeping God at the center was the only way you're going to get through a blended family, I would say.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. It brings a lot of hope for those who maybe right now are going through that, are trying to navigate, right? We all come as we're seeing today with our experiences, what we've been through, our stories, and now how do we blend them together? And it probably requires a lot of trust and stuff, which we're going to talk about later. But Jennifer, your experience is quite unique as well. You and your husband have adopted 4 kids who each have their own unique needs. So what has your journey been? Can you share that with us?
Yeah. I once heard the phrase broken hallelujah for adoption, and that's always stuck with me. I didn't coin it, but I love that because it has felt like that, a broken hallelujah, where we have, prayed for healing. We've worked hard to help our kids. We were in our 20s when our oldest four came home, and then we actually adopted their younger sibling as well later when he was born. So it felt like from the moment I stepped into motherhood, I tripled my family size. It was chaotic from the start. So we, hit the ground running and really never looked back and just tried to keep saying yes along the way. And I don't think I realized how painful the motherhood journey would be, especially as an adoptive parent, where our kids have experienced a lot of loss and a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. And often that has meant we've had to delve into that, especially as the mother figure. So that it's been difficult, really difficult, and also really hopeful. We see how some of our kids are doing now, and it's amazing to see God's redemption in that.
I love that. We're going to talk about some of the joys and challenges in our second segment today as we've all experienced. But maybe, Jennifer, just as we, in the last minute we have right now, can you just maybe speak to the person who's contemplating adoption? Would there be any sort of encouragement that you would give to that person?
Yeah, I think there needs to be people who adopt, and you need to find your community. That's really important. We've done that through our church, and people have rallied around us, family and friends, and there's so much hope. And it really is, I think, going into it with your eyes wide open, that is going to be really hard. But also, my husband and I have been reflecting a lot that as God calls you to say yes along the way to the little things, that all we can do is be obedient to the next step. So whatever that is, he is going to walk you through it. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but there is so much hope, and it is such a redemptive story of God's love. So.
And isn't that true, as each one of you have said, right? You've seen how God's hand has been with you through this entire journey, although it didn't look the way that probably any of you anticipated originally. And so what joy we can find and hope we can find in that. Well, we'll be right back, continuing to talk about the joys and challenges of motherhood. Well, welcome back to our Mother's Day show. I'm joined by Leah, Nicole, and Jennifer, who are sharing their motherhood journey with us. And so, Nicole, you shared a bit of your story earlier, and you've also shared in different avenues how you've carried a lot of shame early on being a single mom. So what helped you heal from that, and how does that change who you are today?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home. We had certain standards around how things were supposed to unfold. And so when I got pregnant, outside of marriage, it was clear that that wasn't ideal. And so for that experience, when I found myself pregnant, the shame set in. And then as the shame increased and my anxiety increased, the behavior of this man, it became more and more violent towards me. And so when my daughter was 2 and we'd been living in hiding for a little while, my parents, who were incredible people, they sent us to a family camp. And I thought, am I even a family if it's just the two of us, right? And so off we went to family camp, and we met up with this beautiful woman. Her name was Lois. And Lois just won my daughter's heart over. And she sat beside us at a campfire one day. And I'd said, I really feel like God is punishing me for having sex outside of marriage. And I want this baby, but I feel like I'm being punished. And she was absolutely so beautiful and kind and gentle. And she said, Nicole, God never punishes with a life. Delaney, my daughter's name, was chosen for you. You were chosen for her. God knew what you were going to go through. And he never punishes with a life. And it just changed everything for me. I'd shown up there just carrying a lot of shame. And in that moment, she's right. God never punishes with a life. It changed everything for me. It changed how I saw my daughter. It changed how I saw myself as a mom. It changed how I saw myself as a child of God. And so that was just a beautiful, pivotal moment for me.
That is
And it just shows up all over the
Mhm.
place when you get that kind of healing, hey?
Yeah,
You can
it
step into your
does.
day different.
And you see how God speaks to you through people and how important community, you spoke to
Yeah.
this, Jennifer, in our earlier segment, how important community is
Yeah.
to motherhood and having those people around you
Yeah.
who can encourage you
Mhm.
in that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that,
Mhm.
Nicole. Leah, you talk about being a bonus mom, right? So you did talk about blending your families. I'm sure that required because your stepchildren are older, and so now you're navigating this new life with 6 children.
Yeah.
How did you build sort of that trust and connection as you blended your families?
Yeah, I think I had to get in the mindset that this was a marathon and not a sprint,
That's
because
good.
you want to develop those relationships very quickly. You just want to be like, oh, like I want everyone to love me and I want everyone to whatever, but that doesn't happen quickly. And I think that trust is built over time.
Yeah.
And it's one little step at a time. And I think it's constantly reminding yourself and bringing like God into every little bit, because
Yeah,
I was thrown into the teenage years and I had really little kids. So that was like, oof, like
Right.
how do I do this, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just remember just being like, God, like I need your grace in every day.
Yeah.
And should not like take over, because I'd never wanted to like insert myself. They did have a mother. And so it's finding that balance, which is really hard to do because they lived with us full time as well. And so finding that balance, but I just kept bringing God back into the center of it all. And I think that's the only way to do motherhood in general.
And
That's
it's
right.
so
That's
true.
So true. Mhm.
That's exactly it, right? And even like I have my oldest is 12. So now we're in this like preteen
Yes.
stage, and all of a sudden it's like almost relearning some sense of motherhood,
Absolutely.
because you're like, okay, now how do I navigate conversations and just becoming more of an himself, right? And so I think that's so important. It's like, God, I need you in this moment. God, help and lead and guide me in this.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, motherhood doesn't always go as planned, as we've talked about today. So how have you, in the midst of adoption and maybe it looking different than you might have thought, found unexpected joy in moments that helped you through that process?
I think seeing those small God moments, those flickers of healing and wholeness and beauty in really hard stories.
Yeah.
Our kids have lived lives that no one should have to live, let alone at the ages they came home. And seeing them be happy, reading their poems about their childhood with us, and seeing them being able to take steps of faith where they feel loved and accepted, it gives you that courage to keep moving forward and to keep trying and to keep trusting God, because ultimately, as is mentioned a couple times already, God needs to be the author of their story, and learning that and not trying to fix it all myself, or recognizing that, same as Leah just said, like I wanted to fix everything right away. I wanted them to be attached to me right away. They came home, they were school aged. That's not going to happen. And so having to have the patience has been something that I feel has really helped my walk with God and helped me as a mom.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
One of the things as a mom that I've learned is God cares about our children more than we do, right? Like he's created them. He knows how they're wired even more than we do initially too. And as they grow. And so it's like, God, give me wisdom on how to parent this. But also, Nicole, something that you said, to remind ourselves that God gave us to them to us, right? And knowing that we are the best mom that they could have is so important. And I hope anybody watching today believes that as well in their journey. But Nicole, maybe speaking to a single mom who might be watching that's trying to juggle everything, what helped sustain you during that time? You were going to school, working, parenting, all those things. What sustained you during that?
Well, so much has already been said around just constantly going back to God. This is your story. This is your child. This is your. You can trust me with what you've entrusted to me.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. I think motherhood is probably the most transformative, the hardest, most important job, and so a lot of the time it's grit and grace, and just this determined endurance. And as a therapist, I often ask the question, what's the story you want to tell? There's going to be a story that you're going to tell about this time
Yeah.
with your child, with your children? What's the story you want to tell? And I think that can really go a long way in motherhood.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Grace is a
Mhm.
big part of
Mhm.
motherhood,
Yes,
giving
yeah.
ourselves grace.
Grace for
right?
ourselves, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jennifer, would you give any advice to maybe a mom who's watching today who has maybe received a diagnosis for their children and it's recent? What would you say to them in the middle of that as you've parent children with unique needs?
I think take time to grieve. It can be a relief to get a diagnosis, both for your child to help them understand themselves better, and for you to help understand and learn more ways to parent them better.
Yeah.
But it also is a process of grieving, especially if it's something that's going to be lifelong. But
Yeah.
I think something that Nicole just said really stuck with me, where just thinking of this isn't the end of the story.
Yeah.
That's
good.
in our case, our kids, even though there's some difficulties right now, we're still in the middle of our story.
Mhm,
This isn't the end.
Mm.
So continuing to take steps of faith, and again, find those supporters, find those people who are going to be in your corner, be in your child's corner, and again, just that whole back to that idea of hope. That
So
there's always hope.
That's
That's
good.
good.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us. I know it's been valuable for anybody who's been watching today, and to know whether we're mothers or we mentor people or whatever it might be. Maybe you're not a mom, maybe you're a father, maybe not a parent yet, but know that God is with you and God cares for you and He is with you in your journey. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
If you'd like any more information on any of our guests today, Jennifer, Nicole, or Leah, you can head to 700club.ca.